Pre-2008, I knew a lot of people that were making a ton of money flipping houses. They were doing exactly what I just told you, buying houses with little to no money out of pocket, waiting for them to appreciate, and selling them. Some were doing very little renovation. It just kept repeating. They kept making more money until all of a sudden the music stopped. And then the Great Recession happened. Those houses that were worth a lot, all of a sudden were not worth nearly what they were. They dropped in value tremendously. So now let's fast forward to 2022 and let's just look at the events that have happened leading up to this very point where your house is probably worth the most that it will be worth in the next decade. And I know you're saying, oh, that's not even going to happen. Well, let me make my point and then you can make your assumption as to what your house is going to be worth. You see, we had this thing called the pandemic. Things were humming along pretty good. The economy was growing. The stock market was doing fairly well. And then all of a sudden, this thing happened, COVID. And the whole world shut down. Every business stopped. If you got in your car and you drove, there was one or two other cars. It was severe. That created a whole bunch of fear. The stock market dropped 34% in weeks. And everybody was freaking out. What's going to happen? Is this going to keep going? Is the whole thing going to crash? Are we going to be shut down forever? What am I going to do? Is my business going to fail? What am I going to do to pay my mortgage? People fell behind in mortgage payments and everything started to spiral downward. And then the Fed steps in. And the Fed says, what we're going to do is we're going to print an obscene amount of money. Now, let me talk about obscene. 2008, the Great Recession, literally the closest this country's ever come to a complete collapse of the financial markets. And it was so freaking close. How much money did they print to bail out the Great Recession and all that housing bubble blowing up? How much? $900 billion. That was 2008. Let's fast forward to 2022. COVID. Masks, all this stuff that we had to go through. How much money did they print to bail us out of that? 5.1 trillion. Now I know some of you are thinking, yeah, well, there's inflation and 800,000 or 900 billion then and 5.1 and it's not really that big. Yes, it is. It's obscene. $5.1 trillion, you can't even fathom how much money that was. It wasn't necessary to print $5.1 trillion, or was it? Well, if you really peel the onion back, you'll start to understand what happened to that $5.1 trillion. I almost said billion. It's hard for me to fathom a trillion. Well, a couple things that happened. Number one, they sent all of you checks. They weren't for very much, $1,500, and that was supposed to make you be okay because your whole business got shut down. And then they offered PPP loans to businesses that had employees, and they forgave them. That was good because that helped the businesses, the backbone of this country. And then they came up with EDIL loans. They went to the SBA and they gave the ability for them to make loans to businesses at a very low interest rate, 3.25%. So that's where some of the money went, but how much actually went there? Not even close to $5.1 trillion. So what happened to all the rest of it? That money went to various other places, but a lot of that money went right into the capital markets, the central banking system. A lot of that money landed in your bank. Your bank now had a whole bunch of extra money then that they could lend out. And if you remember the other thing the Fed did, Fed and the US government, they pulled the big hammer, okay, the lever. What lever am I talking about? Interest rates. They dropped interest rates to zero. They were even talking about going negative, but they pulled it to zero. So now what did you have? Well, everything was closed down, but the Fed just printed $5.1 trillion. They dropped interest rates down to zero. So they put a whole bunch of money into the system. And then what did they do? They made that money really cheap for you, me, and any business owner and any individual in this country. Really cheap to buy cars. You could buy cars 0% interest. You could buy boats super cheap, planes super cheap, houses super cheap. Everything was a fairy tale world of cheap. Well, because there was $5.1 trillion of extra money out there, plus there was low interest rates, what was the most common thing people did? They bought houses, they bought cars, they bought everything, boats. And that created a massive supply and demand issue because there wasn't enough supply to fulfill the demand because there was all this new money at low interest rates, so cheap money. But now, because of COVID and all the people that didn't go back to work, they took early retirements, they decided, I'm just going to go out and be an entrepreneur. I don't want to work for the man. I want to be the man, whatever you want to call it. There was a massive shortage of labor, which then resulted in a massive shortage of supply. Car prices, they couldn't get chips. So what happened to car prices? They skyrocketed. And then people started actually making money on used cars. They would literally buy a used car a year before and then sell it for more than they did it. When in history can you ever remember when you could make money on the worst investment you're ever going to put money into, called a car. I don't remember ever being able to do that, but now you could, okay? And that was because there wasn't enough supply and the money was easy. So now let's move to what we're talking about, housing. Everybody rushed out to do what? Refinance their house. Why? Because they could get it at I think the lows were in the 2% range on a 30-year. Even 3 was the lowest in history. So they were refinancing their houses, but then they said, honey, let's not refinance. Let's just buy a house out in the country to get away from all this crap. That COVID thing's got me scared. So you had the mass migration out to the suburbs. People were buying bigger houses because they could afford a bigger house. Then all of a sudden you had lots of people change where they live because, hey, now the whole dynamic of the world changed. You no longer had to punch a clock, drive to your office. Now you could just work from home. So if I can work from home, why in the world am I going to stay in this crappy place called California or New York? So a lot of people decided they wanted to get out of those crappy states. So what did they do? They moved to Texas, they moved to Florida, they moved to Salt Lake City, they moved to better places with better opportunities and political freedom, which then created a massive amount of demand in these areas, driving the price through the roof on these properties. So if you owned a house in really anywhere in this country, but specifically the hotbeds, your price of your house has gone skyrocket. I'm in Salt Lake City right now. The housing that we were talking about, you could have bought a house in this neighborhood for $200,000 just a few short years ago. Now this neighborhood's $600,000+. Think about that. The same is true for any other area in this country, even where I live, Buffalo, New York. Now, come on, who wants to live in Buffalo, New York? Do you know housing has gone up about 30% in Buffalo? I can't even understand it. I don't know. Why does anyone want to live here? But the price of housing went up. Why? Because there's demand, because it's cheap money. So now we've just laid the foundation. Lots of money, cheap money, and banks had lots of money to lend out to you, and you bought. Then you also had millennials going from living in apartments to now we can afford a house for less than what our rent is. All of this drove the price of real estate straight through the roof. But unlike 2008, you didn't have the hanky-panky of banks lending money out based on stated income. The banks are playing by the rules. So the argument right now is, where is real estate going to go in the future? Well, let me tell you what I see, because my crystal ball just came back from the repair shop. So when I looked at that sucker, it said, it's going down. Let me explain why. Real estate can't maintain these levels. It's a very simple mathematical calculation, one that a lot of people don't understand, especially realtors and mortgage brokers. Why? Because they make money in real estate, and when it's going up, they make more, and if it's going down, it's not good. So they don't want you to think that this is going to happen. But let me ask you this. Not even a year ago, you could buy a house and get a 30-year mortgage at 3%. Today, because the Fed has been raising interest rates, which I'm going to cover in just a second, Fed's raising interest rates, and now that same house might be 6+%. So 3% to 6%. What happened to the payment? It went up a lot. So the person that could afford a $500,000 house at 3% now cannot afford a $500,000 house. They can afford a $280,000 house. By the math. Banks have rules based on your income, your assets, and the price of the house. So the price of the house that the person could have bought a year ago is now significantly lower. But what's happening to the price of real estate? It's significantly going up. That creates an imbalance. So eventually that pendulum needs to shift, and it's already happening. But you're just not paying attention. Real estate's slowing down tremendously. Refinances? Hardly anybody's doing that now, because why in the world would you refinance at 6+% when a year ago you could do it at 3%? Even though 6% is really not that high in the grand scheme of interest rates in this country, but it's high compared to a year ago. So if people aren't refinancing, when does the bubble burst for the price of real estate? Right now. So I said earlier, what's the biggest opportunity of your lifetime look like? In a year from now, everything that you touch, everything that you own is going to deflate in price. Because inflation, what we are in right now, which is the reason everything's going up, gives way and is temporary to something called deflation, which you should love, but you're not going to love it if you're buying into the fact that everything's going to keep going up. It is not. Your investments in the stock market, they're already going down, and they're going to continue to go a lot lower. A lot of people are like, oh, we hit the bottom, it's going to go back up, and they got excited right now because the markets are going up a little bit. We're August of 2022. It's an illusion. You will still see the stock market fall probably a minimum of another 50%. Now, you can sit there and you can say that's not possible, but you know what? It's not even that it's not possible. It's absolutely probable. If you just look at the charts, it's going to happen. There's nowhere else for it to go. And with the stock market going down, what else is going to happen? People are going to lose their jobs. We're going to be in a recession. Oh, I'm sorry, we are. They have redefined what a recession is. It is no longer 2 back-to-back quarters of declining GDP. Now they've reinvented what a recession is. Funny that they do that, but just take this. We're in a recession, and it will get worse, and it will probably lead to be the next Great Depression. I'm not trying to scare you, folks. I'm trying to get you excited because with all of this knowledge that you have, you can get ready, you can get prepared. So when people lose jobs, what happens? Their income goes down. When their income goes down, they can't buy the things, so it slows everything down. When they can't buy the things, what happens to the price of things? They have to come down. It's called deflation, not inflation. And when things deflate, the house that you live in right now loses value. If you haven't got the equity out of your house, you never will be able to, because for the next decade, your house will be worth less than it is today. And if you've got a home equity line of credit and that money's just sitting there, there's a good chance the bank will freeze your line of credit if that money's not out working. So now let's bring it back to the opportunity. If you know in a year to 2 years, everything's going to deflate in price, and you know that housing is going to go down, 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 well, then all we got to do is we got to look at what was the opportunity in 2009, 10, 11, 12. And I'll tell you what it was. It was real estate. Has always been real estate, but there's a right time to buy real estate and a wrong time. So when the price of real estate goes down, you should be ready to buy. But you can't be ready to buy if all your money's in assets that are going to be going down when all of this falls apart. You're riding the wrong roller coaster. You see, I don't like riding roller coasters. I like sitting on the sidelines, watching the whole show, laughing and waiting for that opportunity to have. And then I just come in when everybody else is screaming and crying and they're scared. I'm greedy. When others are fearful, be greedy. Right now, there's still too much greed, so it's time to be fearful, which is why I'm making this video. So get ready, folks, because the housing market is going to go down in price. You're going to have the opportunity to buy lots of real estate, and I would highly suggest you look at rentals because people can't afford houses. So if they can't afford houses, they want to rent. So what should you be buying? Rentals. But at these prices, I would wait till they go down. So I hope you like this video. I know I beat you up a little bit, and you don't have to agree or disagree. We can actually agree to disagree, but I'm going to tell you something. I'm right and you're wrong. So let's place a bet. Here's the bet. Watch this video. I'll bet you that what you'll learn in this video, does the infinite banking concept work, will change your financial future. That's my bet to you. My name's Chris Naugle, and I'm here to teach you how to become your own bank.